Okay, guys, so this subdivision thing that we're doing here is it's very important to understand how you might begin to do this sort of thing. Okay, the way that you do these floor plates. Remember how I told you that it's like the relationships between divide domain and construct domain are tremendously important. Remember that? Yeah, well, the alternative here is exactly that, right? We just do exactly the same thing, but we do it using construct domain, right? The construct, well, actually, let me think about this. Hang on. Okay, so I thought about how to get around that. The thing that I was considering was leading you down the path of using construct domain and then setting it as a non-reparametrized, meaning it would be magnitude value for every step up. But that wouldn't even be aligned because if the surface is warped, then the datum line for it might actually warp or tilt as well. So the better way to do this is to have two separate systems of subdivision. And I know that this is getting a little bit crazy in terms of just conceptualizing it, but think of it this way. In order to do your vertical subdivisions, right, those have to follow the warping of the surface. It needs to kind of follow along with the curvature and how it warps. So we can do that using divide domain squared, but we just don't set any horizontal subdivisions. Okay. Then we use our floor plates, same things that we generated, and we just split it across the entire thing. So it's like you're doing vertical cuts along the warp, and then you're doing your floor plates are just cutting it horizontally. Okay. So that's the system we're going to use. Let's start with the vertical subdivisions, and then we'll get back into it in a moment. But anyway, so let's do math domain, divide domain squared. And I'm just going to borrow this subsurf, plug that in. And you could do both of these again and tie one of them in, but I'm just going to use this. So that's 18 and 8. And turn that on, turn this off so you can see it. And just make sure that you don't have any horizontal subdivisions. And what that means is you need to change your V count to 1. And that's just going to create a system of verticals like that. Does that make sense?
Where did the surface come out from?
The surface came from when we pulled the original surface for that exercise, for the previous exercise.
Where did I find that? Hold on. What?
Huh? What?
What?
Okay, remember when we pulled, that's the ruled surf that we created all the facade sides with. Okay? Then we used list item, and I just grabbed one of them to do this exercise with. So I just took surf right there, and I just pulled it off the same one. You don't have to have surf. I just put surf in there so that it created a more clear understanding of what's happening.
So then how would you do it without it?
You would just take this and plug it in to there and to there. But see, that's two curves when all I really want is just the one. Am I losing you?
You are.
Okay. It's the same surface. When I put these in, you guys have seen this enough times now. When I put these in, it's just because I'm trying to change the path a little bit, or create a wireless connector or something like that. Okay? So anyway, I'm going to keep going. So the next thing we're going to do is take those floor surfaces, and we're going to actually split each one of these. So in order to do that, I need to use under intersect and physical, we're going to do, again, brep, brep. Oh, no, that's going to solve the intersect. Yeah, no, that'll work. All right, yeah, brep, brep. So now we need to go back into our old definition where we created all those floor plates, and we need to find the appropriate set of floor plates. Now we don't want to use the volumes themselves, right? Because that's not going to, it's not going to cut in all cases, and it's not going to be, it has too much geometry. It has all the depth. So what we're going to want is this right here, our array of floor plates. So to use that, I'm actually going to grab another param using Srf, right? That's this right here. I'm going to call this Precut floor plates.
So that's a surface?
Yeah, that's a surface param. Now it's okay to flatten this. Yeah, I think it's okay to flatten this. I'm going to leave it grafted for now, but actually, yeah, I do want to flatten this. I'm going to flatten this. Right-click and flatten. Okay. So you may want to leave one here and create a wireless connector. That's what I'm going to do. Copy-paste. I'll plug that in. Because it already was flattened once, I'm going to take this off just because I don't like to leave extra information in there, but you don't have to. Don't worry about it. Right-click and make that a wireless. See that? Yeah. And then pull it down to where we're working. It's down here. Okay. So what we have are subsurf, that's that one, our vertical subdivisions, and we have our horizontal subdivisions, that's this one right here. I'm just going to use that to split that, and using BREP intersection, that's BREP, that's this one right here. Okay, that only creates curves. So when I turn these floor plates off, and that floor plate off, and for all intents and purposes, I'm going to turn these off as well. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what happened to mine.
Why did it do that?
Me too.
6 untrimmed surfaces, 20 untrimmed surfaces. Okay, that's why. So see how it's going right here, and it has one to the left, one to the right, and then so on and so forth, right? And then it continues up on the last one. This is a perfect answer to your question, Melissa, about why did it need to be grafted? Okay, the fact that it's not grafted means that the first set of surfaces, right? These 6 surfaces. I have one surface here on the left, another one there, another one there, another one there. So it took the first level, and that's actually the base level. That's why there are no subdivisions here, right? It took the first level and applied it to the first surface. Then it took the second level and applied it to the second surface. Then it took the third level, third surface, fourth, fifth, and then finally it took the 6th level and it cut across the 6th surface. You guys following so far? And then from there, it didn't have more surfaces to cut, so it just took that 6th surface and it repeated it the rest of the way. That's what happened here. You guys understand? More or less? Okay. Anyway, so what we've got to do is figure out how do we get all floor plates to cut all surfaces. How do you think we would do that? Well, yeah, we graphed it, right? Because that was the conversation we were having. But which list do we graft? What's that? Oh, A because I'm hovering over it? Yeah, probably. That is the correct one to graft. Because it takes every single one of those surfaces and it creates a separate list with it. You guys following? So when we create a separate list out of these, it's going to take that first panel, and then it's going to take all 20 floor plates and say, smash these two together and cut it, right? And then it's going to take the next panel as a separate list, take all 20 surfaces and say smash these into it, and now cut all of them again on this one. Okay, you guys getting it? So, all right, enough beating a dead horse. So that creates curves, right? This is not a subdivision yet. These are just curves on the surface. I now need to split that surface with these curves. So I'll go to intersect. I think it's under, I could use split brep, but that's with another. Let's do SrfSplit. Yeah, there you go. So we're going to use SrfSplit, and it splits it with curves. So this is important. We have 120 individual curves, right? They're all in separate groups. This part, it gets a little crazy, all right? And you're probably going to have to watch this video again, and I apologize because this video is getting long again. But the surfaces come out in a singular list, right? There are 6 surfaces, and there are 120 individual curves. So if I plug my surfaces in, and if I plug my curves in, it'll take each individual curve and attempt to split it on every single one of those surfaces. Not all the curves are going to intersect with each surface. That should be okay. But take a look here at the green edges. The green edges are telling you where cuts are happening. So the good news is, since I had an individual cut for each one, it actually did cut everywhere, and it created 834 individual fragments. Do we want 834 of them? Probably not. I don't think so. We have to do the math. Let's see. We have... Actually, that might be appropriate. Let's do this as a test. Turn these off. And then let's get list item. I'm going to put a slider in here from 0 to 100. Okay, so my first item is the whole thing. So that already tells you that it's wrong. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. Rather than trying to cut all of them with each individual curve, I'm going to try flattening the list of curves to cut with, and then plugging that in instead. So first, though, I need to save this. And I committed a major felony here in class by not saving this yet. Don't ever do what I just did.
Mine's not responding.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Did you say it?
I want to change it.
No, we just use yours.
Let's call this Megastructure. Wow, that's all caps. Okay, actually, let me think about this a little more. Here's what I want to do. I'm going to look at this a little bit more critically before I do any of this. Okay. I also need to save this one. Save as. Okay, so let me grab that list item again, and I'm going to look at the structure of my curves and how they're reading. So 0 to 100. Plug that in here. If I flatten it, number 1 is down here in the left, and then it goes up that side, and then it goes up the next row, and then it goes up the next row, and then it goes up the next row, and then it goes up the next row. Okay, so that's good news, right? We have 120 of them on 6 panels. So the fact that it's organizing itself by, left-hand side, then it's going up the next one, then it's going up the next one, then it's going up the next one, means I can split this list into panels that are going to only correlate to that specific panel, and then graph them appropriately so that they only cut their instance. Are you guys following so far? Like, I'm going to take the first row of them, I'm going to take the second row of them, and then I'm going to smash them into each of their respective panels only. Right? Then I won't have any erroneous data. So we do that. I'm going to get rid of this now. We do that by Actually, let me borrow this for a second. Check my surfaces. Okay, good. So surface 1 is on the left, and then it goes to the right. That's great news. So we do the splitting by going to set list and partition list. We take this list here that needs to be flattened, and then we plug in a value of what?
0 to 10.
Hmm?
Oh no, sorry.
How much do we want to split it by? 6. Yeah. So you could put a static number in. We could put a static number in. However, if I change my number of subdivisions, then I need to change that number. So the way I'm going to do it is using math. I need list length. So I'm going to measure the length of how many surfaces I have. I'm going to also measure the length of, move these out a little bit, how many curves I have. There are 120 of them, but this is only going to return 120 ones. So I need to flatten that list too. Okay, 120. And then I divide. So 120 divided by 6 will give me 20. So math, operators, division. I'm going to say 120 divided by 6 gives me that value of 20, and I will partition this list by 20s, by a value of 20. Okay, that's important. I will disconnect this. I hate that. It goes off to the right-hand side. Now, what I have, let's look at the data before I actually plug it in. Lists of 20. Are you guys conceptually following me? No? All right. Let me finish the thought because I'm right there, and then I'll go through it again, and I'll diagram it on the board as slow as you need me to. Okay? So I have lists of 20 lines, and I have lists, or rather I have a list of 6 surfaces, right? I need each of those separate lists to apply to a particular surface, which means that list needs to be grafted. Okay? The difference here is I need it to be flattened when it goes into all these other surfaces. Yeah, I need it to be flattened everywhere else. But I'm going to plug this in here and graft it. Okay? So now each of those surfaces is in a separate list. And then I have separate lists, 6 separate lists. That's the important part here. I have 6 separate lists of curves to intersect it with. And I plug that in. What you're going to see is now, notice how it's clear? See how you can see through it now? That's important because there isn't extra data. And we're only creating 120 values, not 837. Okay, this is our first major data troubleshoot. So yes, I anticipate that you're not going to get it the first time around. Okay, so anyway, let me just very, very quickly show you how easy it is to integrate all this stuff. So now that you have those separate surfaces, you can take each of those surfaces and flatten it and plug it in to the same system, and it's going to create those panels here for you again. Whoop, it twisted them. Anyway, all right, well, troubleshooting that would be a different discussion. But anyway, it took the panels and some of them are twisted, but that's the idea, is that it's supposed to do that. Don't worry about it. Let's talk about the data. That's going down a whole nother rabbit hole. But anyway, so data. Let's turn on our floor plates so you can see what I'm talking about a little bit. So now each of those floor plates, right, totally correlated. You guys can see it graphically, not talking about data. Now let's go back and recap, okay? But before I recap here on the board in great detail, what questions do you have? Or is it all just, I have no idea what you did?
I have no idea.
Okay. All right. I'm going to leave this up. We're going to talk about it in great, great detail.